Now we will start with our first panel, which is titled Bridging the Gap, Enhancing Justice System Capacity with AI-Driven Solutions. And I mentioned how we try to tackle this in our project, but now we are going to hear more about from two of our speakers, Martin and Wendy. Would you like to join me on the words? Okay, so to start the discussion, I will give you a bit of the context what we are going to do in this panel. And since it's undisputed that everywhere in the world, children and adults face unmet legal needs, and there's also a global consensus that we need to make justice systems and institutions more effective, accountable, and transparent at all levels. In the age of AI and innovation, we've seen that the Justice Administration has been really slow in catching up and systematically and responsibly benefiting from the potential in digitalization. We will explore in this panel how the justice needs can be addressed with digital solutions. And for this, I have two wonderful speakers. Yes, and to start, I will first hand my mic to Martin to walk us through what people-centered justice is and what's the importance of focusing on the needs of the users of the justice system, children in particular.
Thank you very much, Dóra, and please be very rigorous with timekeeping.
Okay.
8 minutes. So, the first question is, what is people-centered justice? And there is no one definition. People-centered justice is justice which is working for the users, puts the needs, perspectives, experiences of the users at the center, which is very different from what we have now everywhere, not only in Bulgaria, Hungary, or Austria, or Uganda. Everywhere, justice systems are working for the institutions, for the professions. The Bulgarian colleagues here know very well that the Bulgarian justice system is drama after drama focused on the profession, on the institution, who will be the next prosecutor general, what will be the composition of the Supreme Justice Council. The users are nowhere. Nobody cares whether people who got divorced, whether they got good or bad divorce. Nobody cares whether a victim of crime gets what he or she needs, wants, retribution or a restoration. The users are nowhere, and I'm particularly grateful to Dóra, who showed this picture of how they are seeing justice, which is exactly the opposite of how I see people-centered justice. Currently, the justice systems are exactly as this old guy who is living in probably the 19th century. His eyes are hidden, not really looking at the people. I don't know whether you saw on the scales, there were money, nothing else but money. So the justice systems at the moment are completely focused on themselves and completely failing. We do a lot of research, the Hague Institute for Innovation of Law. We do a lot of research asking people, what sort of problems did you have in the past couple of years? And we don't actually ask about legal problems, because if you ask about legal problems, people immediately start thinking about courts, lawyers, police, etc. We ask people, what sort of disputes, disagreements, grievances did you have in your life in the past 4 years? And people start telling us about experiences with crime, about divorces, housing, land, consumer problems, everything that happens in their lives. And the most terrible thing, what we find is that more than 50% of the problems that people encounter in their lives remain unresolved. So just imagine a healthcare system in which 50% of the diseases remain unresolved, or educational system in which 50% of kids are out of school or finish school but without being literate. So the justice system is totally failing us everywhere. And what we need, one of the many things we need, is these systems to change their mindsets, to change the culture, and to put the user at the forefront. Just as healthcare did, just as every technology provider is doing. I'm sure when Apple or Samsung or Motorola are developing their new phones, they're not asking the engineers what phones they want. They are going and asking the users. When healthcare providers are delivering services, they are thinking about their patients. Now, the role of children, in the studies that I mentioned, we only ask adults, because there is this assumption, which I think is pretty wrong, that children are somehow covered by their parents and guardians when it comes to legal issues. And why I say it's untrue? Because of course we see children, especially teenagers, getting into all sorts of situations. And we had a window of opportunity in a way. A couple of years ago, 2022, we did a study in Burkina Faso, one of the least developed countries, a study of internally displaced people. There were militants sweeping across big parts of the country, so millions of people displaced. And together with UNHCR, we did a study to understand what are the justice needs of internally displaced people in Burkina Faso. And we did it with the Homs, Burkina Faso, by the way. And TDH told us many of these IDPs, or many families, many households, are actually households being run by minors, because men are hiding in the bush, or men are in some sort of fighting. So it is 15, 16, 17 years old boys, and sometimes girls, being the household heads and being responsible for elderly, for other children, and they are in a situation where they have to make all these decisions that adults are doing. So in Burkina Faso, we asked younger people, 16 plus, and a little bit to my surprise, but not really surprising, what we saw is that children report more legal problems than adults. Something like 70% of adult IDPs, internally displaced people, had legal problems, whereas 76%, so 3/4, so basically everyone of the children had to deal with serious legal issues. Another thing which was very interesting was that these children are not only dealing with criminal issues, because Wendy is the expert on child justice, but a lot of the focus when we talk about children is about children in conflict with the law. But we see that children more and more are getting into civil issues, administrative issues, and they need knowledge, they need access, they need empowerment. So children in Burkina Faso, but I guess everywhere in the world, had to deal with crimes, but also they had to deal with a lot of family issues, with a lot of housing issues, with a lot of disputes with neighbors. Just imagine you live in an IDP situation in a big town, so you have to deal with your neighbors. And I'm finishing with another insight, which was that children from this particular group had much less access to any formal mechanism, just because of this assumption that it is their parents or guardians who are taking care of them. Children had to resolve their disputes much more often by negotiation or direct contact with the other party, by resorting to some sort of a family member or friend, to some sort of a communal authority, but much less often by police, by any sort of public authority, which is another way in which children are not only exposed to a lot of legal issues, but having much less first experience, knowledge, but also access to institutions. So with this, I end, and I again say this is a very specific glimpse of data about Burkina Faso. But on the other hand, we see adolescents, 18 plus, all over the world dealing with such sort of issues and being much more excluded from certain parts of the law, but on the other hand, be much more knowledgeable and much more capable and willing to use technologies to end on a positive note.
Wendy, over to you. How digitalization in the administration of justice can impact children's rights.
Thank you so much. Thank you also for the invitation to be here. Really, it's great to join you, also to mark this really important project. And I wanted to extend particular thanks to the children that have joined, the young people that are with us. I am one that will definitely be on side with me that recognises the value of children's voices, recognises how much we can learn from them as adults. So I greatly appreciate the opportunity to have learned from you this morning. And with respect to this really tricky question about technology in the criminal justice system and the implications for children's rights, please allow me to just share a couple of thoughts in the time that I have. The first is that I think we always have to be very specific about what we're talking about, what technology, what AI. There's huge diversity here in use cases, and the implications are really varied. And I think that's apparent to all of us as we assemble really to celebrate, a Child Rights by Design AI project. Most of the spaces that I am working in, we are not celebrating child rights by design with AI. What we are seeing is the exponential increase in adoption of technologies without a great deal of thought for the human rights implications. So we have to be really specific always when we're talking about this space. Right down to, who owns the data, what's the data like, how often is this being evaluated, what happens when something goes wrong, was anybody consulted in the intended beneficiaries, were they consulted in development of this thing? The answer to most of those questions is I don't know or no. So we have to really take stock, I think, of where we are at in terms of this really incessant march of technology through the criminal justice system to fix these problems. And it's sector-based, it's not people-centered. At UNODC, we also work with people-centered justice. So we're at a difficult moment in human history where we are trying essentially to slow down the pace of technological change in the criminal justice system and to ensure that people still remain at the centre of this thing. Because frankly, we face big challenges in putting people at the centre of criminal justice in the first place. So I guess that's the chapeau remark. Having said that, I think there's plenty of scope for us to leverage technology in ways that uphold human rights, including children's rights specifically. And here I would look to assistive technologies as the first port of call. I think we have really well-proven AI technologies in voice-to-speech, voice-to-text recognition, for example, that does provide access to justice. Language translation. We also have neurotechnologies that will allow individuals that are locked in through health conditions to communicate. I think we need to be placing emphasis on the ways in which technology can work for us, rather than us work for or be shaped without our consent by technologies themselves. So leveraged correctly, technology can be a powerful catalyst, I think, for access to justice for children. And iAccess shows that this is possible. This is a Child Rights by Design project. It's human dignity by design, privacy by design. It's possible, but it's not profitable. And this is the rub. I think this is where we face our biggest stumbling block. It is time-consuming. It is laborious. We have just heard some really, articulate points about the lessons learned through this project. Through a successful project, there's still lessons learned. I think it's really powerful that you share those. All the participation, all the piloting, all the fine-tuning, it's expensive. And, we are in a situation globally where there's scarce donor funds for these kinds of projects. But we absolutely must not lose hope, and I think we need to commit to opening further spaces and further projects of this kind to show that technology can actually be leveraged in this way. But I did want to say that the signs are not looking good globally. There are forces that are bigger than us. I think we're pretty powerful, we're pretty smart in this room, and I see a lot of really nice, smiling faces. And absolutely, we need to come together. We need to be smarter about how we come together and combine our strengths. But let me talk about some of the things that are stacked against us. We're back. Explainability of AI is a problem. And it's not just that we don't have the collective smarts in this room to explain AI. AI cannot be explained. This is what the black box means. It doesn't mean we need better computer scientists. It means that the computational outputs cannot be explained. We need to think through the implications of that if we want to be applying this in the criminal justice system to ensure that we avoid a double black box. The criminal justice system is a closed system. It's hierarchical, it's elitist, it's archaic, it's closed. We literally close people behind prison walls, behind police station interviewing room walls. If we then further obscure the processes there through the use of AI that cannot be explained, we essentially have a double black box. We've got zero idea. So how are we going on measuring whether it's people-centred or not? No idea. No idea. Can't get in there. Got no idea. So that's one big problem. This is compounded, of course, the black box itself is compounded by proprietary secrets. So people not wanting to release their algorithms, but more properly, people not wanting to share the data in which they've trained those models. And this is because, of course, it's a profit-based model. This has huge implications for concepts that we have long held dear in the criminal justice system around transparency and the principles of open justice. It also complicates and impedes the right of appeal. How can you appeal a decision when no one can explain how that decision was made? What kind of lawyer do you think you could get yourself? Even if you could, I mean, we've got a massive justice gap globally and access to legal aid. But what kind of lawyer has both the legal nous and also the technological nous to be able to effectively make a case to a judge who's got no idea about these things, ensuring that the right to appeal can be upheld? So due process rights are a problem. And I would also say that there are other kind of macro dimensions that we can be thinking about here related to the concentration of tech ownership globally. So the data, the skills, the tech infrastructure, this is held by largely private sector individuals and largely in specific countries. This is not going to be the great democratizing force that we hope that it will be. Rather, we are on track for an increased wealth gap and an increased developmental divide globally. UNODC works all over the world, as does Terra, as does HiiL, and I think that we do need to remember that while we can leverage AI in countries such as those that we're talking about here today in Europe, we have less chance of doing that in other countries where, for example, police officers don't even have mobile phones, let alone computers. So we need to digitalise criminal justice systems from the ground up in a way that is going to be fair and is going to lay the groundwork for fulfilling human rights. And I think that one other point that I would make, because I think that I'm out of time. Okay, I'll make two more points. The concentration, I think, of private sector involvement in the delivery of essential public services. We are having conversations at the global level about AI accountability in governments. These are really difficult conversations. I don't think that we really have the groundwork in place to achieve what it is that, for example, the UN would like to see, which is accountability, trustworthy AI, fairness, the right of appeal, transparency. But I do think that if we see increased private sector involvement in the criminal justice system, we have to think about the human rights implications of that. States are the duty bearers for human rights. If the services are delivered by private sector companies who hold the data, hold the algorithms, can't or won't explain how they work, how is it that we can hold states accountable for human rights? And I know that we have a panel this afternoon on business and human rights, and I think that's really timely. I think these kinds of questions can be addressed there. But I think that this is one major point. And the other point that I would make is around other dimensions that are being accelerated and amplified through technology. So we have geopolitical tensions globally related to the manufacture and availability of these very special chips that are needed for AI. I think that we have to be really mindful about the fact that AI is extremely damaging environmentally. And I know there are people that would say, well, AI is going to give us the key that we need to solve climate change, but we're not at all on track for that. I think that we have to be very mindful of the AI hype bubble and who it serves. I'm pretty sure that it's not serving children. So there are other elements there around data justice and informational justice. How is it that we can expect children, we do all the time, responsibilize children for creating a better future? We said this morning, we respect children's views and we know that they've got a lot to give. But the truth is that we are increasingly living in a world where children's voices cannot be heard because of the way that algorithmic flows are curated on the internet to create echo chambers and toxic sites of misinformation and disinformation. There's not a lot of justice for children in any of that. So I think, again, let me go back to the hope at the beginning and say that we absolutely can and must leverage technologies for children's rights, but I think we have to be realistic that the odds are stacked against us.
Thank you so much. Let's see if this works. Is this working? No. I think there's some liquid inside. Whatever.
So thank you so much. We will open the floor for questions later on, but I hope you have a lot. But first I would like to give some remarks on, from Martin we said that there's a lot of need and there are very well-identified needs that we can touch upon, and there are all these opportunities that technology can bring, but I feel and during our conversations to prepare for this panel, we've agreed that when we talk about innovation in the field of justice, we very easily shift to either digital innovation, or we enter the field of introducing more administrative rules, making legal more complicated procedures, and how we can navigate this field to keep digitalization and digital innovation as an option, but also don't neglect the other ways that we can innovate in this field to actually respond to those very well-identified justice needs. Whoever takes the mic.
I first take the mic. Absolutely. I think of course, we've lived through many cycles of technology, and we know that technology is not a solution to the social, political, cultural problems. They can help, but they cannot cure very deep gaps, cleavages, cultural perceptions, etc. I think one of the important things, certainly not the only thing, but the important things is that when thinking about justice needs fair solutions, we have to collectively focus on the user. As I said before, and Wendy reinforced it, in people-centered justice, the user is a central value, not just a nuisance. And I'm sure if you go to police stations here in Sofia, or in Budapest, or in Amsterdam, police will more or less treat you as part of the problem when you're coming to complain about something. Same happens in courts, same happens in many legal institutions. When we put the user at the center, we understand what the user needs, what the user perceives, and specifically children as users, then we can see what sort of problems people have, what sort of solutions they want. And some of these solutions might be solved or addressed by technology. Some of these solutions might need to be addressed by social innovations. Some solutions need to be changed by legislation and more institutions. The important thing is to start, I believe, from the problem of the users, understanding the users, and then solving solutions, which is exactly the opposite of how we work now. What are the problems of judges? Judges in Croatia, for instance, without wanting to pick up from this country, but judges in a court of Croatia said that they want separate bathrooms because it's very annoying to go together with other court users to the bathroom, or they want elevated podiums because they are judges and want to be a little bit higher than the others. So this is an example of how when you do view on justice, if you take the perspective of the institutions, the providers, the professionals there, you completely drift away from the users. And for me, I don't have a solution, of course, whether and what sort of technology it should be, but technology should be used together with other sorts of innovations to solve people's and businesses' problems. But here we're talking about children, so not individuals.
Thank you very much. A couple of remarks on the same question. I think that you can tell from the opening remarks that I shared that I feel like techno-solutionism is a pretty powerful discourse in the current age. And I think that we do need to move away from understanding technology essentially as the key architect of our social policy. Because at the moment, I think I'm spending time across the world in lots of different spaces, including ones like this, where we are saying, okay, you know what, let's put our heads together and try and make the best out of this technology so that it can deliver some good, for beneficiaries. With all the will in the world and the funding, which is super important, these small moments of good can happen. But the tide of technological determinism, I think, needs to be addressed. Otherwise, we are going to have a continual situation of FOMO in the criminal justice system, the fear of missing out, which I think is not how we should be making public policy decisions globally in sectors as high stakes as the criminal justice system, where people can have their liberty deprived, or indeed their right to life in some jurisdictions. I think that we are in a situation where the criminal justice system feels like it's on its back foot because it sees technology charging ahead, and we've got to have some of that sparkly stuff within our systems, because you know what, we do have massive court backlogs, and we do have criminals that are committing crime without us knowing about it before they commit it. So there must be some app for that, right? I think we really need, essentially, and this is part of the work that I am doing with UNODC, is to target hardened criminal justice actors against that hype. And for them to understand that the real work that they need to do is the real work that they always needed to do, which was build a people-centered criminal justice system that delivers justice in a manner that is fair, that is equitable, that is safe, that is timely. Ensure that there is no gender-based violence for individuals when they come into contact with the criminal justice system, and a re-victimisation. So call that innovation, because at the moment we're in a situation where we think we must innovate. Let's get a tech company in here to help us do that. I think what we need to do is innovate. Let's have women police officers. Let's have LGBTQI judges. Let's ensure that our legislation is going to give us what it is that our people want, and to do that we have to consult with them. So I know it all sounds ridiculously old-fashioned, but I think that we are making a mistake if we're looking for silver bullets and we're just looking for shiny technology that we can plug in to do a job. Because I do otherwise think that this image that Theodore showed us of this wizened old, man, white man who's got money as his primary consideration, that system, because I think it's a fair representation of the justice system in very many places, what we're going to see is an acceleration of that system through technology, an amplification of that system, and it will be further obscure. We won't be able to analyse it because of this black box phenomenon.
Thank you so much. I really like how, what I'm getting from this is that we should try to innovate with using some of the solutions that we had already, and not to reach for all the new shiny things. And this gives me the impression of when we are trying to enter this, and we work a lot on restorative justice, and there's a lot of colleagues here who work on it, is that we know that it's an archived practice, and now, after ages of figuring out how to do people-centered justice, we reach back to, let's do what we did in restorative justice before. And on another remark that I had is that I think on the specific people-centeredness, we can learn a lot from the private sector, the needs of the users and their comments are like primaries for designing services around them, and they have a lot of like pathways to feedback the providers if they have any problems. So I think in this specific regard, we can look for good practice on that arena as well. So I think we still have some time. I will jump to another question, which is, of course, like there are certain aspects of the justice change where responsibly applied AI and technology can be the right match. How we can ensure that that human judgment will remain in the loop, because we know, and especially for children, it is really important that they see the people that they are interacting with. They know who's making the decision. They know what are the elements of this decision, and how we can strike a balance between keeping humans and well-skilled professionals make decisions, but also leverage this little technology that we have available.
Thank you so much. A couple of points. I think that one of the things we have to be careful about is the euphemistic language that is used to refer to the role of humans in the future. So human in the loop, don't worry, there'll be human in the loop. And when I am told that, for example, by police that are using AI or other frontier technologies, I say, well, what does that mean? Can I see the standard operating procedures that detail the points at which there is a human in the loop? Because it sounds great, and I think so. There's a really boring kind of organisational work that can be done to ensure that humans still remain in control of decision making. But I also think, drawing very clearly from the disciplines, for example, of evaluation, I think we can say there are some technologies that should not be used in the criminal justice system at all. So, for example, predictive technologies, predictive policing, which draws individuals into the criminal justice system completely needlessly, and we know it has very harmful discriminatory effects, including the children of colour. But I think that one of the other things that is really, if we go with the strengths-based, because I don't want you to think that I'm bringing only a negative lens to this, I think that there are strengths within the criminal justice system that we need to keep alive. And one of the things we could do is keep a really close eye on what is said about the shifting labour market globally as AI starts to take over some of the jobs that can be performed by AI, these repeatable tasks. To ensure that there is a recognition of the importance of legal expertise, of the work of social workers. Social workers should not be replaced by chatbots. And this is not a reflection at all on this particular project. It's about this broader kind of winds that we are facing. But also, and I know police are not popular in all conversations and in all jurisdictions, but police discretion is a very important thing. And if we lose that, so this is really clearly back to that point about humans, if we lose police discretion, we're really in trouble. What we need to do is strengthen the skills with which police exercise that discretion. Train them very well in non-discrimination, train them very well in procedural justice, which really involves a lot of listening rather than talking and just slapping down the criminal code. Let me give you one anecdote, I'll stop. Let me give you one anecdote that was shared with me by a police officer when I was in a situation at an expert group meeting where we were talking about what if it is the case that all policing is automated. There are really no police, maybe just a few in command and control, but the highways are all automated, tickets just issued, money just gets sucked out of bank accounts, criminals are just apprehended by drones before they've even thought about the crime that they may or may not be going to commit. This is a future that we really probably need to start to come to grips with unless we can find some levers to slow this down. This police officer said to me, I do actually think this is a scary scenario, these are his words, because imagine, I'm a police officer, and he is a police officer in this jurisdiction, and I'm driving down and I see 3 unrestrained children in the back of the car. So, as child rights advocates, we've got huge, red flags. We need these children restrained so that they're safe, and we maybe want to just check that this family is okay. The police officer was actually thinking the same thing. If he pulls that family over, he would find out that that family doesn't have the money to put 3 car seats in the back of that car. If that family is slapped with an automatic fine and the money is pulled out of their account, or they can't pay that money, the person will be put in prison automatically. No scope for police discretion. Otherwise, that police officer, if he is community-minded, he might find a way to ensure that that family is provided car seats so that the children can be safe, family can stay together. This is preventive against crime and, of course, fatalities.
Another anecdote to come to your question. It was early 2000s, and I was leading interviews with juvenile judges back in times when it was possible to go to Russia and interesting. And it was a town with they call it a colony, big prison for juveniles, far away from Moscow. And my key question was, how do you interpret the sentencing standards? Because criminal code gives you quite a lot of discretion to punish juvenile criminals. And there was one judge who was close to retirement, the oldest, not the most senior in security, but the oldest judge there, who was the most lenient. And I was asking him, why you are such an outlier? His younger colleagues were delivering very harsh punishments, usually towards the maximum that the criminal code was allowing them. And then the old judge was saying, because throughout my career, I figure out that the harsher the punishment, the more likely this young guy, usually guys, will remain in the criminal justice system, will ruin his life, and then it's a never-ending story. I see that when you give them a chance, there is a probability, certainly a probability, not a guarantee, that this person can live a better life out of the criminal justice system. So, back to your question, I think, at least for now, we don't see some sort of wisdom in the AI. Probably we'll never see some sort of wisdom based on moral and ethical judgments. And a lot of justice is based on that. But also a lot of justice is based on pure classification of information. Certainly you don't want tens of thousands of law enforcement agents to check Instagram and TikTok and other mediums for risky behavior. So I believe it's a matter of deciding wisely, which I doubt that we have very good capabilities to do, but we have to decide wisely what we can give to AI and what we have to keep with humans. So, sorry, no clear answer, but that's how it probably will go.
I think that's perfect. Just to jump back to what you've been saying, Wendy, like the introduction of these technologies in the justice system, that it usually comes with a lot of administrative burden. I think this could be something to communicate that although you are expecting this to be super efficient and solve everything tomorrow, the time to streamline it through processes and come up with these standard operating procedures can be so lengthy that maybe looking for different solutions could be an answer. And also on the important role of social workers. If you had the time to read the chatbot response, you've seen that basically when we drafted the answer structure of the chatbot, we started with the social ecological model maybe that's applied in child protection, and we figured out how we can first create a response that refers children to their closer circles of community and protection, reliable adults that they can turn to, and try to give them little tips that you can also go there, give them the agency to maybe in the response identify someone that they can turn to, and then list down the formal services as a last resort. Okay, so we are running a bit short on time, so I will open the floor to some questions, if there's any. Do you have one? Okay.
I always have one.
Yeah, I know.
Hi, Bob. Thank you so much for the highly interesting inputs. I wanted to ask, because also for UNODC, if I may ask, you work with the police, and how has AI within the criminal justice system been implemented, or let's say within the police system, in relation to kind of biometric aspects? I know there's a lot of issues that come with it, and one comment that I had was, even though we do give it to the discretion, I'd say there needs to be that level of discretion so that there is kind of that human aspect to human oversight. It also is so close to corruption and harm that can be done, that discretion can cause. So it's a bit of a balancing act where I go, how can you integrate it in such a way that the police that is there in front of this child or whoever can do it in such a way that it's balanced, balanced discretion using AI. Maybe that's a simple point, but it would be great to hear from your expertise.
Thank you so much for the question. Those multiple questions, actually, in one. I guess starting with biometrics, this, again, I would say, it depends what we're talking about with biometrics. Let's take facial recognition. If we're talking about one-to-one facial recognition, human rights implications are not as high as the one-to-many uses of facial recognition, where they're drawn through databases to identify a person, perhaps even in the street if it's real-time facial recognition, and also retrospective facial recognition. So, identifying who was at a place at a particular time, and also going back through, there's all sorts of things that they can do now to project a person's age when they were young, project a person's age when they were older, all of these sorts of things. I think we're coming too close to violating rights, really with privacy, but also equal human dignity. And there are very live debates about these things in very many jurisdictions around the world, and of course, this is also a focus in the AI Act, the EU AI Act. Other biometric technologies that I think are worth keeping in mind relate also to prediction, so the use, for example, of behavioural recognition systems. And we're really working very much in the realm of sort of pseudoscience here, and I think that there needs to be work done with police to explain that this is not a way, it's not okay to think that you can look at the shape of somebody's face and determine whether or not they have a criminal predisposition. We've actually gotten rid of these kinds of notions from our criminal justice system, and we're at risk of real repression if we adopt those kinds of technologies. So this is work that we are doing at UNODC. It's extremely difficult because there's not a lot of resources for the work on this, but I'm doing what I can. So we are going to be releasing evidence briefs on specific use cases of tech in the criminal justice system. So one is facial recognition, one is electronic surveillance, another one on neurotechnologies, and I think we would need a lot more time if we were going to talk about that and the risks with the criminal justice system, and then another one on predictive policing, which is also another really live topic. In terms of discretion, I completely agree. And I hesitate even to talk about police discretion because I think, and I did actually couch it in a caveat, sort of saying that police discretion really doesn't have a good reputation globally. But I do think that we are asking humans to do a job in interacting with other humans. There are parameters put in place, all of the legislative framework, the standard operating procedures and so on. These need to be right. They need to be strengthened, they need to be complied with. So it's not as simple as just saying do it. I think part of the other work that UNODC does is work a lot with the police training academies to institutionalise through those the learning that is needed to ensure that police discretion is in fact in line with national and international law. But also the other thing that I would say is we've taken our eye off accountability mechanisms for police. Police must be transparent to the communities they serve. They are answerable to the communities they serve. This is the message that we share at UNODC. And so you need really strong internal and external transparency, oversight, accountability mechanisms. They need to coordinate well with one another. And again, this is a big package of work that we do at UNODC. There's no silver bullet. I don't have one at all. I think it is really those hard yards. And there will always be mess. There will always be corruption, there will always be abuse of power, there will be unlawful killings, but I think what we need to have is accountability for those to make the systems
questions?
Okay, then just to conclude this panel, I think, or what I'm definitely taking from this is how interesting this is that the now focusing on these new technologies and how we can ensure that they are adopted in a transparent and accountable manner. I feel that this brings a new way into the old discussion, like the transparency that we need to, the accountability for police. This is just putting a new wave into all these old discussions, and I think, yeah, this is something to take from this panel. Would you like to add anything else? Or?
I just want to thank you for the efforts put in this project and your partners, and I hope this is very quickly going from testing into scaling, because such sort of solutions are very much needed, and I really hope next year again in Sofia we report how many millions have used it, and not only that, but what you learn and how you can improve it, because for me this is part of people-centered justice. You see how a particular mechanism works, but you constantly question, is it really working? Can we improve it? So if we can meet next year or in 5 years and you report that, I'll be really happy. Thank you.
We'll try it. Yeah.
I spoke a lot, so I won't say anything else, but also just to reiterate my thanks and congratulations on this project. And I think it needs to be promoted because it shows that it's possible. You know, child rights by design is not just a string of words. I think it's something that's actionable. So thank you so much for proving that.
Thank you for joining us and for all the encouragement.